So my name is Michael Chesham, and I was on a session called, I believe, Reinvigorating Politics, or Reinventing Politics, that was it. And yeah, we had a very interesting discussion. I think it was, essentially completely derailed by very basic philosophical differences about how you're going to rebuild institutions. So, my point was very much, yes, we can talk about rebuilding institutions, we can talk about how major changes in society have made our institutions, democratic institutions, dysfunctional. We can talk about, localism, we can talk about the values we might want to, sort of new institutions of the state or not of the state to have, but essentially that's all quite academic and it lacks content and political focus. Because I think really the political question you have to ask is, if we're going to completely transform democracy, re-engage people, how are we going to get there? How are we going to build a mass force of people in society to bring about that fundamental democratic reform? And that's about building a mass movement, and that requires you to marry your hopes, ambitions for reinventing politics and reinventing democracy to a radical social and economic platform. How are you going to engage people in politics? Well, actually, it's not just going to be about processes inside the state. You've got to engage people on the basis of radical policies that address their real concerns about their actual lives, on housing, and about a battle for power in society. Because really what democratic institutions are about is a crystallization on some level, at some scale, of power in society. So for me, that is fundamentally linked to class politics, it's fundamentally linked to social and economic politics. And the discussion that we had was totally at odds with each other, because my fellow panelists talked about how we had to get out the trenches in order to build a consensus across society, across politics, uniting people from the left and the right, how there are good people inside the conservative parties, etc. And I basically think that we absolutely need to get into the trenches, because talking about academic concepts about reforming the state and transforming democracy are worth nothing in the new political context that we are operating in which radical social and economic programs are what is winning the day and gaining momentum. And so for me, transforming the state and rebuilding democracy is about a struggle for power in society. And in the end, we didn't even manage to say, as a consensus, that we would empower people who were economically disempowered, because that was too close to class politics.
And then what kind of statement did you actually come up with?
I'll read it out. We want a kind of participatory, decentralising and inclusive politics that engages people, bridges difference and solves problems together. Rapid changes render our political institutions dysfunctional, which I'm also a big fan of motherhood and apple pie. But I don't bear anyone ill will. We couldn't come up with anything because we disagreed so sharply. But I think this goes back to what I think the problem with the way the civil society's role in general in when you're talking about democracy or politics is that it's retreated from politics. NGOs, the academic world, everyone else has watched the traditional left crumble over the last few decades and has retreated from politics. And actually, being beyond left and right, being apolitical is very useful for getting funding grants, but I don't think it's how we're going to change the world. And I think that if we want to actually transform democracy, I think we've got to get into the trenches and win that fight from the left.